Grab your pre-workout and turn up that volume. It is time for a new episode of the Powerlifters Den with your host, Cam Smith.
What's up, guys? Cailer Woolam here. Thanks for having me on, Cam.
No problem. So I guess we'll start off, tell everybody about where you're from, kind of what got you into powerlifting, and how you've been doing.
Okay. Well, so I am from Lubbock, Texas, and so I've been here my whole life. It's a pretty simple little town, and I guess there just hasn't really ever been a reason to leave, so I just stay here. Being strong is something that's always been important to me ever since I was a little kid. So it kind of just made sense that I found my way into powerlifting. I remember when I was in 8th grade, I figured out that powerlifting was a thing once I got into high school that I could compete in and whatnot. And sure enough, my freshman year, I started when I was 15 years old. I did my first powerlifting meet, and I've kind of just been in love with it ever since then. It's just kind of mattered a lot to me. For whatever reason, that was the thing I've just pursued more than any other sport or whatnot.
Yeah, so from what I know about Texas, powerlifting's pretty big in Texas, especially in high school.
Man.
Yeah, up in New England, it's really, there's no powerlifting teams. You're starting to see it more and more now in college, for sure, but you don't see it at the high school level at all around here, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy down in Texas. I mean, some of the strongest kids, on the whole planet, I would think. It seems like a lot of them kind of, I don't know how it is nowadays, but it seems like a lot of the ones I lifted with in high school kind of stopped competing and whatnot after. So there's some kids I remember watching in high school. I can't even imagine what they would be like now if they had, kind of stayed after it as long as I did or whatnot, including one of my best friends who won state his senior year. His name's Philly. And I mean, he was there's just no telling what some of these kids would have been capable of, so.
Yeah. So was he like one of your partners in crime back then?
Yeah, I would say so. And we're still pretty close to this day. We keep in touch and whatnot all these years later. So
yeah. So before high school, were you still into kind of the world of powerlifting, or is it something that you didn't really know about until you got into high school?
Well, so I guess I really started getting interested with lifting weights specifically when I was about 12 years old, because I had a weight set in my garage. It was like a full rack, barbell, and a bench, and 300 pounds worth of weight, which, that was way more than I needed. So I kind of just picked up on doing it one day, because I wanted to be stronger than my friends and whatnot, because we had started lifting in our athletic program at school when we were in 6th grade. And I mean, it was probably only a couple of weeks of lifting in my garage like that before I was getting on YouTube and looking at videos of strong people and whatnot. Ronnie Coleman was one that I remember watching a lot. Because back then there wasn't just a ton of fitness content on YouTube. So it was I remember Andy Bolton was also one of the first people I ever watched. And, he deadlifted 1,000 pounds, and he was the only one. And at the time, nobody else was even close to getting 1,000 pounds, and it was just him. And then, the next best deadlift was 900 or something. He was so much further ahead of everybody else. I remember watching that one, that Gene, the guy that funded the RPS.
Yeah, Rauchek.
Yes, that guy. I watching his 1,000-pound bench, and then watching a real maybe Donnie Thompson squatting 1,300 pounds or something. But I just remember those 3 lifts specifically because you look up the heaviest lift ever done on this, the heaviest lift ever done, and at the time that's what those were and stuff. And yeah. So I guess that's when I discovered that people go to competitions and lift competitively and stuff.
Yeah, and Texas isn't equipped lifting is kind of big in Texas in high school as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually only equipped lifting in high school. Well, that's the only division, so you can compete, Ron. A lot of kids do and whatnot, but you still get put up against the single ply lifters. It's all counted as the same thing. So.
Okay, and so did you just go raw? Did you ever think about hopping into anything, or?
Well, so I did use the equipment, but it was the situation was there's a bunch of us high school kids at powerlifting practice, and the coach just brings out a box of old equipment, and we just kind of take turns going through it and try to find something that fits us. So I never had a bench shirt that really helped me. Basically, my bench shirt would help me pause what I could press raw without a pause.
Yeah.
So it was kind of and then the squat suit maybe helped a little bit, but my legs were kind of long for it, so it would just ride up really high. So I think I mostly just got some help from the knee wraps, mostly. And then there, the deadlift, nothing really helped on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess obviously with being known as like a deadlift guy, do you kind of just, was it something you kind of fell in love with and like that was your favorite lift, or you kind of realized early on that like that was going to be your big lift, or?
You know, I'm not sure if I would say it's like my favorite lift. Maybe in a way it kind of is, but it only became that way because I did realize I was good at it. You know, I noticed that it's the easiest to get it. It was the easiest one for me to get excited about because it was the lift I could do the most weight on. You know, I remember being like the kid, and I would miss a squat in my garage or something and have to dump it, and it would, you know, fall down to the bench or something, and then I would be able to just pick it up and put it back on the rack. Like whatever I would miss on my squat, I could just deadlift it back on the rack like super easy. So I guess, you know, I always just felt really, really strong like with that, you know. But then once I started competing in high school and I realized that I was stronger than some of the other kids at deadlifting by like quite a bit, then that's when I really started liking it, and that's when, you know, I kind of maybe realized I was kind of good at it. My other lifts were okay too, but maybe like a lifetime favorite would maybe bench press. You know, that was the first lift that like I really loved. You know, and that, I mean, I think that's like where everybody really starts.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Everyone's like, how much?
how much can you bench press? Like your friends don't care how much you squat when you're like in high school and stuff. You know, so
I know it's like friends now that like don't really know about the sport. They're like, oh, how much you bench? I'm like, I don't really like benching. How about you ask me how much I squat?
right.
Yeah. So, going into your first meet, like what was that like? I guess going into your first meet in high school and then going into your first meet outside of high school sports.
Okay. Yeah, so my first meet in high school, from what I can remember, it was, I mean, I guess I was just like a little bit nervous, obviously, because I had just never done anything like that before, but I was maybe a little bit more confident than I should have been too. Like maybe I'd been squatting kind of high in practice, and then, I don't know, for some reason I was even doing things like trying to squat heavy the day before the meet and stuff because I thought it would make my body feel prepped. I mean, there's just no guidance at all at this point, you know, and you don't even have like a coach that tells you, hey, that's like not a good idea, or hey, don't do this, hey, do that. It's kind of like we're just doing like whatever. So that was kind of where I was at with my first meet, and I actually bombed out on squats. Like I missed like something like 205 pounds 3 times. You know, I was competing in the 123-pound weight class or something like that. So I was like a pretty small kid, but I mean, I remember missing that 205-pound squat 3 times in a row. And when you bomb out in high school, you're done with the meet. Like there's no participation. They don't like let you do bench press and squat still, or deadlift still, like they do at some of the adult meets because you paid a membership. Well, It's like you just have to sit down for the rest of the meet. Yeah, so I remember that kind of sucked. And I almost quit after that meet, but then like, you know, one of the other kids on the team kind of talked me into staying and going with the next meet and stuff. So I guess I'm glad that he did, you know, because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I would have found a way back into it like eventually, but I was getting ready to quit then after, you know, bombing out and whatnot. But, and I guess my first meet as an adult, like outside of high school, I was kind of just like a lot of the other kids. After high school, I didn't even know, like when I was 18, 19, I didn't know that powerlifting was a thing that you could still do after high school. Like I didn't know that there's like these other federations that I could just go drive down to, like in San Antonio or something. And I didn't know it was like such a thing. Like I thought maybe they were just small little random events here and there that you could go participate in if you wanted to. I didn't know it was like a whole league with federations and then a bunch of other people that did it. So I did like a little push pull meet. You know, because at the time, you know, I was having a hard time with like squats and my knees and stuff. So I was really just, you know, good at bench and deadlift. So that was the first 2 meets I did after high school. It was maybe like 2.5, 3 years after high school. I just did like little push pull meets and whatnot. But then when I did those meets, I realized how lame push pull was. I was like, wait a minute, like push pull doesn't mean shit. Like it's like, you nobody cares at all what your push pull total is. You don't really, I mean, you competed against yourself because, you know, it was like its own category. So I realized how lame push pull was and how much glory there wasn't in it. So I was, after that second push pull meet, I was like, okay, I'm doing full power only from now on. And I, you know, that's when really started, you know, caring about the total again.
Yeah,
So,
for me, my first meet was a push-pull meet because I wasn't really sure of where to look because I knew there was 100 different federations and there's 100 different places to go do a meet. So we had one about 30 minutes for me, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do it because squat's my favorite lift, and what's the point if it's not a full meet? And my friend was like, just hop in, try it, and I did it, and it went well. And I'm like, well, all right, when's the next full power meet nearby? Because that's when I'm signing up. So
Yeah. It's like just once you do that one meet, it just really sparks you to get back into it pretty easy.
Yeah, and then so that was RPS, and I've done two or three full RPS, full power RPS meets, and then this past meet that I just did this weekend was IPA. So this was my first new federation, and I had a great time. It was awesome, and with the amateur and the pro day, like the amateur day was mostly raw guys. Just that's kind of just I feel like generally that's how it ends up being. And then the pro day was mostly multiply. So it was like two different meets, and it was really cool to watch.
Cool. How long ago was that?
How long ago was which
Oh, that meet you're talking about.
the push pull or the one I just did?
Oh, the one you just did.
Yeah, so that was this past weekend down
This
on
past weekend.
yeah
Okay,
down at Blue
okay.
Collar on Long Island. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. That's right.
yeah, it was a 9/11 memorial meet. So that one was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So I noticed you kind of haven't been super active on social media. I know you're coming back from an injury, and I believe your last competition was 2019.
Yeah, November 2019.
Yeah. So what's been like the journey back to recovery? Kind of what's the next plan for you?
Well, it really hasn't been a very good process. I mean, I've been like as positive about it as I can be. But it's kind of just like one thing after like another. And I didn't even say anything. I tore my lat again about a month ago, and I haven't even said anything to. I mean, there's a few friends and stuff that know about it, and then a few other people that I've told. But for the most part, like I haven't even gotten around to posting about that one yet. I would say like the main thing that is kind of making everything pretty hard for me, or that has been the pec injury. The other ones have all felt pretty small and insignificant in comparison, because the level of those injuries was just a lot less. Where with the pec, it kind of detached from the bone, so and I wasn't able to get like surgery in time. And if you can't do that quick, then it's kind of just it was, and the point I was at, it was just too late. So I can't really do bench press anymore. So, and without that, it's like I can't really ever beat the total that I had. So it is kind of sad that that part of like, my career is definitely over. Um, because without being able to push bench press like 100%, I mean, there's just no way I'm going to beat that last total. It took so much to even get that last total that I got. I think I only had a little bit of room left, in the rest of my life anyway to improve on that. So, but yeah, and I think over the last, and it's been about 2.5 years now with this pec tear. And I would say it probably really hasn't made any progress over the last 2 years or so. It's maybe even gone downhill like a little bit. But I mean, I stay after it, and I work on it like as much as I can. I find movements that I can do. Flat bench is kind of just out of the picture right now. I haven't really been able to do it hardly. I've been doing a bunch of incline and stuff. But the result of that over the last 2.5 years is that I think there's just a big imbalance in my upper body now, because I've now had 3 lat tears. I've torn my left lat twice, and each one was like, they've been long enough apart from each other that I don't think one had anything to do with the other. So like I tore this left one, and then it did okay, and maybe like 10 months later I tore it again, and that was last July, so July 2022. And then August 5th I tore the right side, and it was like, so completely unrelated to the other two. And it was, so I keep running into like little things like that have been kind of just annoying. I mean, the lat tears haven't been bad, but it's still like a setback for several months. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But it still is like, I can see that getting back to being good, but the pec thing really isn't like that, I guess.
Yes. So I guess what's kind of like the new mindset or approach to your training with that being said?
I'm kind of just trying to feel good at this point, and it's been hard to have like a goal that I can consistently try to achieve. And because I feel like I'll set one goal and then something will happen, and then I kind of have to like restructure it, and it's been kind of just going like that for the last 2 years. So I don't know. Like I guess at this point, I guess I'm just trying to make my body feel like a little bit better. I don't really know what kind of strength goals I could really set right now that would be realistic. I would like to get like a little bit bigger, so like a lot of my workouts have just been like, general bodybuilding type stuff and whatnot. Because I think, I had a lot of really good years of training. I started at a really, really young age. So I know things kind of fell apart for me at not necessarily a very old age, but I mean, it was after like a whole decade of just going like nuts, lifting and whatnot. And I do feel like I pushed my ceiling really far to whatever my potential like would be. And I took advantage of a lot of things at a early age. And I don't have and there's like other things in life that I kind of put on the back burner for a little while just so I could maybe be a little bit better at powerlifting. And I'm really glad that I did that, I guess, because I don't know, I was able to kind of like achieve a lot. So that being said, I'm kind of, I mean, I'm bummed about how things are now, but I really felt like I made the most of this when I could. So there is that feeling too. So I guess, goals with training is just to, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm just trying to learn as much as I can right now to be a better coach. Like, because that's been kind of the thing, is just like I figured out like helping other people get their PRs is that feels like just as good. So, the way that I train now is a way to kind of, I don't know, just feel a little bit better and, try to learn some new things for potential clients or current clients that I have.
Yeah, I mean, your legacy in the sport is definitely pretty set in stone. Like you've had some amazing accomplishments. So just being involved in the sport still and just helping people get anywhere near some of the accomplishments you've done are it's respectable, and I'm impressed with your career. And I mean, I remember like when I first started getting into powerlifting or kind of watching YouTube videos or watching like Mark Bell and Stan Efferding, and like you were one of the people that I watched and was like, wow, that's some insane weight. Like it was just baffling to me. So,
Well, thanks. Appreciate that.
of course. So I guess now we'll talk about your deadlift, kind of the journey behind that, maybe some of the science behind it, some of the people that have helped you along the way, some things that you might have, or some cues that people might not know about, or something that's really helped you.
Okay.
So I guess to start is, why don't you let everybody know what your best pulls were at your different body weights?
Okay. So I guess I'll just go with my all-time bests. I was about, so conventional deadlift, I did 909 and I weighed about maybe 214 pounds at the time. Anywhere from like 210 to 214. And that was actually like the last PR like I ever was able to do. And then my best sumo deadlift is 959. And that was also about the same body weight, about 210, 214. And I say that those are my best. Like I've technically done some heavier deadlifts, but these were both calibrated plates, Rogue Ohio deadlift bar. It's something that would have been repeatable in a competition, I guess. So yeah.
So when you were starting to kind of get your deadlift locked in, I know your conventional is relatively close to your sumo. For some people, it's a much larger gap. Kind of how did you figure out that your sumo was just a little bit better? That was your pick.
Well, so the way it worked in high school with deadlifting was that we weren't allowed to do conventional deadlifts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's just, how like the perception of or that most people have of deadlifts is that they're bad for your back and you're going to get hurt if you do them. And some people will just not see it any other way. Well, our athletic director would not see it any other way, and he didn't allow anything other than sumo deadlifts. So for me, that's just what a deadlift was for like a long time. I didn't start doing conventional deadlifts until I was like out of high school, or until like late my senior year after that powerlifting season had ended. Yeah, so I guess and then I don't know, after high school I kind of just went conventional for like a really long time, and that eventually got stronger than my sumo, but that was just because I wasn't doing sumo. Once I started doing sumo again, it ended up being like, the things I would struggle with conventional I could kind of do sort of easy sumo. So I don't know, it's just always been like a little bit easier, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess during an off season or a prep, I'm assuming you would alternate. I don't think you wouldn't alternate between the two during a prep, correct?
Right. I would start the prep like, I mean, if it's like 16-week prep, for example, maybe the first, 6 to 8 weeks, I might be doing conventional. And then any sumo that I do get done in that 6 to 8 weeks would just be like technique stuff. But I'm doing all the work and all the building conventional.
Okay. So you find that you built your deadlift better doing conventional, but sumo was better for obviously a higher pull.
Right. Yeah. Like I feel like I made every bit of progress on my deadlift from conventional deadlifting, or just focusing on and focusing on accessories that strengthen my conventional deadlift. So my goal for the conventional deadlift was never to do it as an accessory for a sumo deadlift. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of lifters will make. They're like, oh, I do conventional deadlifts too, but the way they do conventional deadlifts is like it's like sets of 8 with like a lower RPE. And I'm like, no, you have to like kind of replace it completely and then make that your primary stance for a while. Forget about sumo for like a little bit. Pretend like this is your main stance. And then that's when I feel like you really get like the true carryover. And at least just for me personally, I never got a ton out of training sumo. It was just something I had to be fresh on the technique for. But like it was just, I didn't really notice myself building like a ton of strength there. It was more like a stunt, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite like deadlift builders, whether they're accessories or secondaries?
Okay. Well, I think everybody knows that I like the bent over rows quite a bit with the barbell. And I was really lucky that once I got back into powerlifting after high school, that I just happened to stumble across Ed Cohen's videos, and I just happened to listen to the things that he said. And sure enough, to this day, that's still some of the best advice like I've ever heard about deadlifting. So I was fortunate to find that very early on, and I try to share that with a bunch of other people. But those heavy barbell rows and how specific they are for the deadlift, and doing them with just not touching the floor each rep and getting a little bit of body English in, I do feel like that helped me quite a bit. And then another one that helped me quite a bit that I don't think most people really talk about as a deadlift builder would be like just really heavy barbell shrugs. I feel like I got so much out of that. I mean, I got up to where, I was doing maybe like sets of 8 with over 700 pounds or something like that. And then I would even go like a little bit heavier than that. And then even if I could only just pick it up from the rack and move my arms up and down like that a couple times, I would still kind of do that in the same workout. But routinely, there was days out of the week that like I had a day every week where I was doing heavy barbell rows and heavy shrugs, and I feel like that just did so much for the strength of my back. It just made my back so strong. And that's already like just genetically, that's already one of the stronger parts of my body too. So I think it may have responded pretty well to maybe some other movements. I just happened to found those two early on, and I'll always like doing them.
Yeah. So for me, my weak point is my back. It kind of shows up in all three of the lifts, and it'd be interesting to kind of work back. I kind of put barbell shrugs on the back, but I don't think I've done shrugs in I don't know how long. So maybe that's something I could consider to try to work back in and see what I can get out of it, especially going heavy like that.
Yeah, and at first some people might think that it's kind of like it's good for your lockout, right? Because you're in that locked out position, and I guess it kind of is, because I pretend like when I'm doing my shrugs, I pick it up from the rack like I'm locking out a deadlift, and then I kind of just start like the movement from there. But I feel like it helps me off the floor more than anything, because it makes my upper back so strong that it's not going to break when I go to pull the weight off of the floor. So, which I guess that in turn also helps with lockout too, if your upper back doesn't break off of the ground. So,
yeah. And another for me, my deadlifts has kind of been like a struggle for a while. Like I pulled 585 in a meet in 2021, so that 5-pound PR this weekend was a long work in progress, and I've been chasing 600 for a long time. So that's kind of something I'm focusing on now. Like same with bench has been a struggle. Like my squat, I don't think I've plateaued on squat like ever, and it just keeps going up and up. But deadlift has been like a struggle, quite literally a grind.
Okay.
And something for me too is obviously for a lot of people, deadlifts can be very taxing, very fatiguing, especially during a prep. So for you during the prep, how did you just, were you able to recover very well, or how did you manage the fatigue?
It did seem like I was able to handle deadlifting like pretty heavy, almost twice a week for a lot of weeks during that prep. I guess once the weight gets like really, really heavy, then it's, maybe kind of once every 5 days kind of deal. But it seemed like I always had a pretty decent time recovering from deadlifts. Yeah. I had a harder time recovering from the squats because, my quad tendons were always hurting real bad and stuff like that. So that was kind of always the thing that I felt like I was recovering from. And deadlifts, I always just seem to, and I think maybe everybody probably has something like a part on their body that's just like a little bit stronger than everything else, that like, that's their strong day in the gym. And it's probably also that part of their body that seems to respond well to just any type of training or whatnot. And I guess for me, it was kind of deadlifts.
Yeah, that my quads are like, my legs are like that. Like everyone, or like most of my friends or some of my training partners are like, my legs are ready for 700 on squat, but my back is not. So,
Oh, I see.
yeah, because I lose
Okay.
my back a lot when I squat.
Gotcha. I was always the opposite. My back was totally ready to squat 700, and it's like anything I was able to squat, I could pick it up off the rack and walk it back, and all day, like just take like a million steps setting it up because it was so easy to hold on my back. But then as soon as I went to squat, it would just like, it'd be hard.
Yeah. So during a prep, like how did you structure your deadlifts during prep? If you were doing it twice a week, you said?
Yeah. So I have one primary day where I'll do the actual lift, right? Like, from the floor, normal deadlift, competition style. And then I have one accessory day. And the goal for that accessory, well, and it's just a variation, I guess, of the lift that is preferably easier than the main lift day, but it still kind of complements it. So, one's like a combination I really liked was just pulling from the floor one day and then maybe doing like a block pull the next day. That's something that's like worked for me for quite a while, is just having that block pull, because usually with like whatever I could pull from the floor, I could always do a little bit heavier on the same week from the blocks a couple days later. And it, even though it was a little bit heavier weight that I was moving, that shorter range of motion and the little bit more height to it, it just didn't make the lift feel as taxing on my body. So sometimes I felt like the block pulls were pretty easy for me to recover from, because it was, I don't know, I guess just that shorter range of motion and whatnot. So it seemed to go pretty well in a weekly routine with pulling from the floor.
Yeah. And how did you like structure your percentages, I guess, as well?
So I guess the best way I would describe it is kind of like in a 5 week pattern. So maybe week one, everything's pretty easy, whatever that is, whether 70%, probably less than 80, but RPEs are probably closer to 7 this week on most things, 6 to 7. And then the next week, it's still easy, but a little bit more medium. Maybe some of the things will be RP, maybe we'll have some RP 8s and whatnot. And then the third week, all the lifts are, we're past easy. We're a little more medium now. And main lifts are getting a little bit heavier. And at the same time, whenever the weights get heavier as the week goes on, the volume also goes down on some of these other sets too. So if I'm lifting heavier on the main lift, then the volume afterwards is going to be like a little bit less. So then the fourth week would obviously be a little bit harder than the third week. And now we're getting a little bit past medium, but not necessarily super hard yet. And then the fifth week, I would go pretty hard. Then that would be kind of like, but the fifth week, I would have goals for the fifth week on when I started the first week. I would kind of know when I started the first week, I would kind of know what I wanted the fifth week to look like that week. Sometimes it would be 4 weeks though, just depending on, So pretty much I would only have like one hard week out of like one really hard week out of every 4 or 5 weeks or something like that.
Okay. And then so when it came towards like the end of prep, I guess, what was your last heavy pull? Like how far out, or did you do a really heavy pull like a couple weeks out, or then a light week following, or?
Yeah. So I did mine, maybe it was like a whole month before my last meet. And that was that. Yeah. So my last heavy pull was a whole month. And the way that I decided that was I looked at like, the amount of weight, right? Because like I know I just said I recovered from deadlifts pretty well, but if I wanted to kind of like fully recover, I think the fact that it's just over 900 pounds just makes it like I just can't do that as often as I can squat 600 pounds. Even though a 600-pound squat was harder for me to do or perform than a 900-pound deadlift, the fact that it was 900 pounds still just wore me down like a little differently. So the deadlift was always done 3.5 to 4 weeks out usually. Maybe when I was a little bit weaker, a little bit younger, it would be like 3 weeks or something. And then the squat would be like, 2.5, 3 weeks out, the last heavy squat, and last heavy bench, maybe like a week and a half out. Bench seemed to be pretty easy, pretty easy to like recover from. Like I didn't need as much time.
Yeah. I'm the same way. So what I've been doing the past 2 meet preps and kind of think of what I'm going to stick with. I usually do my last heavy pull like 2.5 weeks out, my last heavy squat 2, and then my last bench about a week and a half. And I feel like that gives me enough time to recover from the deadlift, but not be too far out to kind of just obviously you don't forget how to deadlift, but obviously you got to keep that technique locked in.
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah. So I guess after I did that heavy pull, maybe I would have like the week after would be like 90% of that. And then the week after that would be, maybe even a little bit less. So it kind of just taper off, and then pretty much I would just show up on the day of the meet, and it, I've done this with some of my clients and whatnot, not necessarily that long, but I think like when I share that with people, some of them it'll give them a little bit of anxiety, being like, that's such a long time before the meet, all this or that. But the reality is like you're probably not going to get weaker in a whole month. I mean, unless you kind of just like stop eating, but if you're keeping up with your diet and you're still like lifting a little bit, that level of strength is going to stay. Like you can maintain that for like a month, kind of no matter what. And sure enough, I was usually able to do that.
Yeah. Along the way, when you were kind of just growing your deadlift like crazy, maybe who are some of the people that have helped you, or what are some of the things you've learned, or like some advice you could give to someone that maybe wants to focus on deadlift or just, I guess, powerlifting in general?
I guess, just like many other people, Ed Cohn was a big deadlift motivation for me and whatnot. And then just all the things he would say about, of course, the accessory movements, like I mentioned a minute ago, but then just other things that he would talk about with technique, and then the way that he would help people and stuff. And, I just always agreed with the things that he said. And, trying to think, as far as things that can help other people, there's a lot of advice that you can follow, and I guess at this day and age, it's kind of flooded sometimes on the internet, and sometimes it's hard to know like what's like the best thing for me to do and whatnot. So I don't know. I think it's always good to kind of just be as resourceful as you can. I don't know, because like I feel like over the years things kind of always change for me. Like I kind of like I could never, if I had just only stuck to the same few things that I started doing that helped me at first, then maybe I wouldn't have got as far as I did, because it's like, well, certain things are going to maybe stop working for you after like a while, and you kind of have to change it to something else. But if you're stubborn and stuck on, well, this is the way to go, then I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is just be open-minded to like trying new things with training and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. Did you always have maybe one or two things that was consistently like something you were attacking with your deadlift, or did it seem to be something that was constantly changing every once in a while?
I would say the one thing that for sure just never changed at all was the way that I treated conventional deadlifts, and like for my sumo deadlift and whatnot, because my sumo deadlift was always the stronger stance, so I felt like I always just saved that for a different day, you know what I mean? And all my training kind of just went in conventional.
That's awesome. So I guess going into a little bit about coaching, is that something like how many athletes do you have? Kind of like what's your process behind coaching? Like how do you I guess break down people's videos, or like what's your methods?
Okay. So right now I have 26 people, and that's like a number that I'm slowly working on increasing, but for the longest time, like I'm just trying to figure out, first I had to figure out how can I manage 10 and do a good job with all 10 people? How can I help those guys make progress? before I felt comfortable in taking like more than that. So, and I guess since I've been out of competing and whatnot, that's been something that I've been doing more and more of. So I guess I'm up to about like 26 now that I'm able to kind of like handle and keep up with. And the way that I do it with everybody is, so all the programs are kind of custom made. So we'll just kind of get some brief questions done from the very beginning, just to kind of get just like basic info and whatnot. And then I'll kind of just make their first week. And I'm usually pretty specific about like I like to select certain weights for the top weight or for the main lifts and whatnot. So I usually pick the weights week to week on squat, bench, and deadlift instead of giving like an RPE. There's plenty of times where I do give an RPE, especially if it's like on a lift that maybe we've never done before or something like that. But so I really try to stay as true as I can to the whole customized program thing. Because I guess like to me that's like the only way coaching can like really work. Like I don't know how else I would do it other than like writing each little thing in everybody's program like every single week. So that's what I do for all 26 people. And after every one of their workouts, they're able to check in with me I do it all on WhatsApp. So they send me their videos of like, I ask for at least one top set and one back down set from each main lift each day. I have some that it's kind of hard to get that much from them, but then there's some that they send me every video from their whole workout, and that's great too. So I like to make it whatever experience they want to be for it. Like if maybe, I try to make sure they at least send me the important list that like I need to send, but like if they don't want to send it to me after every single workout and they'd rather wait for the end of the week to send it all. And like, I have some that just don't necessarily want to communicate with me as much, and that's okay too, because I kind of want this coaching experience to be whatever they want it to be too. Like I don't want, like, I guess I will take it as seriously as they do. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many coaches out there that just use all the cookie cutter bullshit. So I think obviously it's important. Like you said, you're not getting anything out of coaching by just having them send you something that 20 other people, because they're not paying attention to your weaknesses. They're probably not even watching your videos. Like,
right. Yes. Yeah. And I just don't even think I could call that coaching at one point. So when I hear people talk about having like 100 clients, I'm like, okay, I would love to see like how they're managing all of that and what exactly they're doing for each person on a weekly basis, because perhaps I could learn. Maybe there's just like some big learning thing. Like, but I'm always trying to figure out how to learn how to handle more and more people and whatnot.
Yeah, and for me, I kind of just started. I would say officially, I'm just only doing powerlifting clients now. Like, general fitness is fun, and it's fun to see people get healthy and stuff. But now I kind of in the mindset, like, I want to get strong. I want to get people strong. And so I have 3 clients who are some friends from the gym, and one of my close friends that he's been one of my clients for a while. And so I'm doing their meet prep right now. And luckily they all have basically the same weaknesses. So they're getting the same program, and I'll make slight adjustments, whether it's fatigue levels and things like that. So I'm kind of lucky to have that, but it's not cookie cutter by no means. Like, I'm reviewing their videos, breaking them down. And so I think it's very important, especially to manage a decent amount of people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise I feel like you'd just be guessing, it'd be like a blind guess week to week, or.
Yeah. Do you go to any of your clients' meets at all?
I have, but I guess if it's on the other side of the country, I can't really, or if it's something that I would have to travel to, maybe not. There was a time where, the client had bought my plane ticket and stuff, but they're also like a close friend of mine. We were friends before the coaching thing. I was friends with 2 of them. And there was maybe another time where I took like a 6-hour drive to go help one other guy, but it is hard for me to always be able to do that. Just because, like, one, I'm far away. Half of them don't live in America at all. So, and then the other half are like, I would have to take like a plane there. So just, money wise, that doesn't really make sense. But I mean, if anybody ever wanted to have me there and they're like, hey, I'll get your plane ticket, I mean, of course I'd be open to that. But most of the people that I have are like college kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's there's a powerlifting meet here actually in 2 weeks. So it's on September 23rd. here in Lubbock. It's a USPA meet, and there two of my online clients are actually flying in to do this meet here, and one of my other online clients lives here in town, so I'll have three of them over at this meet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I would like to do that a little bit more in the future, though. Set up something where I have maybe like a whole team of people that goes and competes at one meet somewhere, and I can go if it's for like 5 people or something,
Yeah. And obviously it's a little bit easier to kind of have someone, I guess a client of yours, kind of solo mission it if they're a raw guy, especially if they're just sleeves. Because like with multiply, you need people to help you out, and even someone to wrap you, things like that. So I guess in terms of like them picking attempts, how do you plan up to second, and then, or do you try to plan all 3, or what's your?
Yeah, so we definitely plan up to a second. But like the way their minds usually are, they're like, what do you think we're gonna end on the third? And it's like, well, we can kind of have like a tentative goal, like a little bit.
Yeah.
And usually like the training will be set up in a way that will tell us, hey, this is what we should be able to get on a third. So it won't really be too much of a guess, but we definitely, plan an easy opener, and then the second attempt in training or the second attempt at the meet will be whatever will be pretty close to whatever the heaviest last single was you did of the prep. It'll be somewhere in there, because that last single of the prep, I like to set that up in a way that there's still some room left after it. Like I don't like to hit anything RPE 10 in the gym. I like to save that for the third attempt at the meet. And that's like the only time that you really get to have that, attempt where you get to try as hard as you possibly can. And that, kind of makes it a little bit more special too.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of how I structure things too, because I mean, at least for me, all of my PRs are like all-time PRs are at the meets. So I try to leave a little bit in the tank, and I feel like during prep, I don't work up to openers, maybe on deadlift just for the taxing reasons of it, but I'll usually work up to like a estimated second attempt for squat and bench.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you relatively give all your clients like the same, I guess, length of prep or the same like days of training?
I'd say it kind of depends, so I seem to have quite a variety at the moment, so I have a lady that's like 42 years old who is, I mean, she does do like the power lifts and stuff. But her training is about 4 days a week. Most people don't do less than 4 days out of the week unless they are doing like a really, really heavy week. Then maybe it's just like 3 days out of that week or something. But yeah, most of them do 4 to 5, I would say. Six seems kind of like a lot. Yeah. I've had some clients in the past that they're really insistent about being at the gym 6 times out of the week. And if that's the case, well, we can make that work. Right, we can make that just like a really easy day, or maybe some of the things we were doing on one of the other days can be left out just so you can have a 6th day in the gym, But yeah, I would say if they are kind of like more on the beginner side and we're more in a building phase, then, it's hard to do less than 5 days a week. I really like 5 days a week for that. But then once things start getting like a little bit more serious, and, squats and deadlifts start getting a little bit heavier, then maybe like 4 days out of the week.
Okay. And so I guess for you, what are some of your future goals, or maybe some short-term goals for you right now? Just in general.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to keep getting more PRs on coaching and stuff like that. Because I would say that this year is the most PRs that I've helped people get in coaching. So it's been like an exception. That's made it feel like an exceptionally good year for me. It's been like really fulfilling and stuff. So I guess like immediate goals would just be to keep doing the best that I can at that, and maybe be able to do it for like a few more people. Because there's still things that, you always think you can do better with it and whatnot. And it's never good enough, or, you can never program too perfectly for anybody. And there's always another thing that you can like learn. So I guess I would like to kind of just do that. And then maybe as far as like a fitness goal, I just want to hit a golf ball like really, really far. So,
I just started getting into golf. I just started back in April, actually. So
Okay, nice. Yeah, I got back into it after the pec tear because I was like, well, without bench press now, like it's much easier to put my hands together. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because before it was just like, oh man, my chest would be done after that because like I mean, I'd have to like push my hands together to hold the club, but now I don't.
Yeah,
Like
it's so funny how stiff my swing is from it. It's
yeah.
because I did collegiate football, so I finished that
Okay.
last November. So I'm like, all right, what's next? So obviously, every retired college athlete picks up golf. So I'm a golfer and a
Yeah.
powerlifter now, a dynamic duo.
Yeah. And I would like to do a long drive competition. Like I actually want to go and
Okay.
train and then do one of those competitions. Because to me that's like the powerlifting version of golf, you know, just hit who can hit the ball the furthest.
Yeah.
Me, I can. You know, who cares about anything else? Like I don't care about anything else other than that.
That's
So,
awesome. All right,
yeah.
so I guess before we wrap things up, I like to ask all my guests if you could give a new lifter or someone going into their first meet one word of advice, what would it be?
Well, whatever your opener is right now, do a little bit less than that because it's probably too heavy.
Okay, that's a good
and
one.
it's going to be okay to do that, and making it closer to making the weight of your opener closer to your second attempt does not make the second attempt better. It's going to make it worse.
Okay.
You know, because some people will be afraid, well, if it's too far away from my second attempt, then maybe it's not going to be too much. Well,
Awesome. Well, I wanted to thank you for taking the time and coming on here. I had a blast. So, just want to let them know where they can find you on Instagram.
yeah, just Dr. Deadlift. Or if you type in my first name, Cailer, Cailer, that's a pretty unique name, so that's a pretty good way to find me anywhere.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you once again for coming on. It was a blast.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me. Good
Hey.
luck with your podcast and everything.
Thank you.